All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Yountville Chamber of Commerce March webinar on creating a positive culture within your business. I'm Whitney Diver-McAvoy. I'm the president and CEO of the Chamber, and so glad to have you here with us today. We're joined by my good friend, Shane Etzwiler from the Great Falls, Montana Chamber of Commerce today. And Shane and I worked together on this topic at our annual Chamber conference last month, which I was the chair of, and Shane presented on this topic. And I was so moved by his presentation that I wanted to bring it to you today on this webinar. So I think there's a great opportunity here to learn new things for your business and some really nice actionable takeaways to go ahead and implement right away with your team. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Shane, who's going to walk us through the webinar today. And Shane, go ahead.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Again, if you can turn on your video, that'd be great. I kind of like the interaction and whatnot. So if you could turn it on, that'd be great. A couple of things. When I speak to a lot of groups, whether it's on customer service or a topic like this, I always start with a pretty robust good morning, a very enthusiastic good morning, high energy. And when you're in a group of people, and what's typically the response when people respond back good morning? And there's a reason why I do that. So it's a very robust good morning. Then I have the group stop. We're going to stop right here. I said good morning enthusiastically with a lot of energy, and you as a group responded back to me. But how would you score your response back to me as far as being full of energy and enthusiasm on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being no response or a very poor response, and 10 being the most energetic, enthusiastic response you could give? And typically most groups say, boy, that was a 3 or it was a 4. And then I asked the question, I would agree with you, is a 3 or 4. And so how many times do you get a second chance to make a first impression? You don't. You get one chance to make a first impression and you blow it. But then I say, you know what, you're in luck today. I'm going to give you a second chance to make a first impression. So let's all try it again together. Good morning. And then of course it comes back roaring, good morning. And people are kind of smiling now and they're having fun. And then I stopped them again. I said, now let's score that response. And 7, 8. And I said, I do that for a couple of reasons. Some of you at first might say, well, Shane, I didn't know it was going to be a game or a contest, or I was taking a drink of my coffee, so I wasn't prepared. But again, what I talk about is impressions and how important first impressions are. But then I also ask them, now I want you to think about your individual score. I asked you to score it as a group. Well, what is your individual score the first time and the second time? Because you know what? Why was the second response much better? A couple of things. Because I said, this is kind of the goal. I'm going to give you a second chance. Oh, Russ, I love that. Good morning, chat to everybody. I gave you a second chance. So now we are kind of focused on what the opportunity was, but then collectively, each of you responded to a much greater extent the second time. And so when I talk about creating a positive culture, and why it's so important is because it is a team game. Everybody has a part and a piece as far as creating this positive culture within your environment. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about creating this positive environment. I love interaction with the audiences. So there's times I'm going to ask you to do things, maybe write things down, maybe raise your hand. And again, that's just kind of why I would prefer to have everyone's video on, but also I understand. Also, I'm going to ask you to be present. Hey, if you're like me and I'm on a Zoom call and I got a lot of things going on, I get my doors blown off every day with emails. And I know Whitney could to attest to that too. The chamber life is crazy these days. A lot of people have a lot of requests for us. I can't get to my emails every day, but I get my doors blown off. So sometimes on Zoom, I take advantage of it and I answer emails. But just for today, for these next 45 minutes or so, I'm just asking you to be here, be present, so that way we can all enjoy this together. So the first impression of the day, how important that is. So I'm going to ask, who are my managers in the room? Raise your hand or go to your emoji reactions and just, I want to see who the managers are. Perfect. And the reason why I ask that is because as a manager, and I'm also a believer in that as a CEO, we set the pace, we set the culture. How are we coming in the morning and what's the first impressions? And I'm just going to share with you real quick a text from my daughter this morning. So, and it just really made the point. I'm like, I'm going to share that with this group that I'm sharing with today. So my daughter, she's 23. She's working at the hospital. She's working in a birthing center. and she has not gone to college, but she's got experience with assisted living things and whatnot. But she sent me a text this morning. So she works 7 to 7. She works 12-hour shifts. So she says, made my doctor upset in the first section today. Maybe don't be mean to me and I won't make your job a little harder. He started out with being rude and rude comments, and the start that he had was not good, and it did make me feel good starting today. And so again, that's why it's important as a manager, the first impressions. They're in surgery, they've got someone who's in labor, and they have to do a C-section, and this doctor starts off by being critical, making rude comments, and it just didn't start her day well. So when you think about that as a team environment, how important it is that we always get our teams off to a good start in the morning as well too. And so we're part of that. So part of that is that we own that, and we own how we start and how we help our teams start the day. So I want you all to just do this little exercise for me real quick. I want you to write down something that's awesome about your job or about your team. I want you to write one thing down. Maybe it's a word, maybe it's we work together well, maybe it's we have fun. I want you to write down one thing that is awesome about your job or your team. I want you to write that down right now. Just take a little bit. Because I also know that when we focus on the good things and the positive things in our job, then it does make our day a lot easier. I mean, we're going to have difficult days. We all do. I mean, the last 2-3 years have been difficult with COVID and mandates and lockdowns and what we can do and what we can't do. And now rising prices and supply chain issues. There's so much we could focus on that are negative and detractors. But we really need to start out our day or even close out the end of the day with what are we grateful for today? What are we excited about today? What are we looking forward to today? Because again, that starts to put us in the mindset of here's what I'm looking forward to. And then we start creating this positive energy within ourselves, and it just carries right over to the team. So I'm going to have you do a couple of other things as well too. I want you to write down, I want you to score right now. What is the positive culture and atmosphere within your current team right now? Scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, man, it's bad, Shane. It is a rough culture right now. Or man, we've got a great team. We're really clicking. We're working well together. Maybe it's a 7 or 8. Say, man, we are knocking it out of the park and we are just sailing. And maybe it is a 10 and that's awesome. But I want you to write down the score for your culture within your organization, within your team on a scale of 1 to 10. So again, we're all managers. And so I'm just going to share with you again that you own that score. You own the score that you wrote down. Maybe you're not directly affected by it. Maybe you come in and you are that person, that positive attitude. But again, as a manager, we own that score. And again, I do a lot of different talks with a lot of number of different groups. And sometimes I'll have them score. Why don't you score your finances right now? How are you doing financially? Why don't you score how you're doing spiritually? Why don't you score how you're doing with your relationship with your wife? Maybe it's a great score, but how's your score with your in-laws? So I have people score different things and I'll say, you own each and every one of those scores. And you have the power to make a difference with those scores. And so what are you going to start doing today to start improving those scores? And so again, we own that and we own a part of that. Just like the introduction this morning, good morning. That's the first impression. I know you're all on mute and you weren't able to respond, but we all own that score initially. And then when I give you the second opportunity, you also own that score. Maybe you did go from a 3 to a 7, but why was it not a 10? Again, if we're going to give our best every day, that's part of creating that positive culture as well too. We create the environment we're in. And so again, how do we create that? How do we create that environment? So again, I'll go back to as a manager that we are responsible for that. So again, I'm going to ask another question here real quick. So just raise your hand or use the reactions to raise your hand as well too. How many of you know within your organization, you know your mission statement? You know your mission statement and you know it by heart. Raise your hands. Awesome. I see a thumbs up too, so thank you. That's the start. What is the mission and what's the purpose of our organization? What are we trying to accomplish within our community, within our business, within our organization? How many of you know your vision statement? And sometimes you have a mission statement, you have a vision statement. Sometimes they're combined within some organizations. I understand that, but you know your mission or vision statement by heart. So if you're raising your hand, I could call on you and you could say, yep, Shane, this is it. This is our mission statement. This is our vision statement. And how many of you know your core values? Some of you have your core values and maybe what they are. What are your core values? Awesome. Now I'm going to ask this question. How many of you can confidently say, my team also knows my mission statement, our vision statement, and my core values? And where is that? And are we talking about it? And we're talking about it within our group and our organization. Again, within the chamber, we have a mission, we have a vision, we have core values. We also have a lot of committees. And I know Whitney's going to be shaking her head. Yeah, we have a lot of committees within the chamber as well, too. And part of our committees is we have what's called a program of work. What is the purpose of this committee? So I've asked all of my staff, as we're the point people for the various committees, I want to see at the top of every single one of your agendas that you put out, what is the purpose of your committee? What is the reason? Because we all get busy, we get thrown different things in life, and we're asked to do a lot of things. And sometimes that's not the purpose of the chamber. That's not the purpose of your committee. That might not be the purpose of your work group. You're a manager of a certain group or your organization. What are we trying to do and what are we trying to accomplish? So again, the vision is, as managers and CEOs, what is the vision? What are we trying to accomplish? And are we continuing to challenge our staff and continuing to work down that direction and continuing to push our staff that way? So as a manager and as a coach, you are responsible for creating that healthy environment, that open environment where people can come and talk and visit with you, that environment where it's fun, it's creative. And so that's part of your role as a manager. And so part of it is when you have your core values or your mission, do you include that culture statement in there as well too? We want to be an organization that's known for creating great things, providing services to our community, and having fun within our own group and work teams. So I think you might want to take a look at your mission statement, value statement, or your core values, and you might want to take a look at it. Are we also having there creating this fun culture where employees are respected and that they enjoy coming to their jobs as well too? So as managers and as CEOs and the group that's here today, I like to use the word that I'm the coach. And I'll tell you a couple reasons why. My background is retail. Been in retail for 25 years. I've managed Herberger stores, which is a store very much like a Macy's or a Dillard's. It's kind of an upper northern tier states. It's no longer around. Actually, they went bankrupt 5 years ago, unfortunately. Also, I managed Cabela stores across the country. I managed big Cabela stores, the ones that were 200,000 to 250,000 square feet. Had a management staff of 40 people, employees, 400 some employees. Also managed Hobby Lobby stores and worked in the corporate office here as well too. Some of you might be managing bigger teams, bigger companies, bigger corporations and that as well too. But the word I always used, even with my managers, is that I'm your coach. And so I always told my managers is that, but you are my customer. So at Cabela's, I had a senior management team. So I had about 5 on my senior management team. I told them, you are my customer. What do you need? How can I meet your needs? How can I make sure that you have what you need to accomplish what you need to in your job? Senior managers underneath you, you have your area managers. They are your customers. What do they need to do their jobs right? Do they have the tools and equipment? Do they know what the expectations are? And we'll talk a little bit later about that. But then for your area managers, guess who their customers are? They're the employees on the front line. Because if I model great customer service, I'm creating that great environment. I'm asking, and I hold my senior management team also to be modeling customer service to their area managers, asking the area managers to model great customer service to their frontline employees. Then how do you think my customer service was in my stores? It was always great because I made sure that my managers were providing that awesome, excellent customer service to the employees that are actually working with the customers. So again, how can we help them achieve? Number one, by setting the expectation and then modeling it ourselves. So that way we can help our employees do the very best that they can as well too. So I like to use the word coach. And so because as a coach, and if you think about your career, whether it was in high school or college, and I'm not just talking sports teams, I'm talking about maybe you were in speech and drama. Maybe you had an art teacher, you were in the art, you loved art. Your teacher was there to kind of coach you on techniques, how to do things better and how to bring out shading or different elements of what you were doing producing and creating, but they were your coach. Because why did they coach you? They wanted to help you succeed. So the reason why I use coach so much is because it's a very good tool to use when you're handling difficult situations with employees. There's a conflict, there's a situation. Maybe they didn't get good customer service. Maybe there's a conflict between a couple of employees. And I'll just tell you an example that I just had just this past week. I actually had an employee that was creating an uncomfortable situation for another employee. The other employee obviously felt comfortable enough coming to me because it was a supervisory relationship. So, hey, just concerned about the situation. I want to make sure that protecting everybody and everybody's hearts on this as well too. But here's the situation and here's what's going on. So obviously I had to pull the other employee in and say, you know what, I'm here and I'm a coach and I'm a coach all the time. And what I appreciated about this employee is that they were very coachable. They've been with me for about 1.5 years. And as I've continued to talk to them about their opportunities, and again, mid-40s, so been in the work area and work arena for a long time, came from law enforcement, so it's a different mindset, but definitely was coaching him. So appreciate his coachability and that his willingness to listen, respond, and take appropriate action to continue to improve his performance. I said, so we've got a situation now that we're going to talk about, and it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm here to coach you through it, because ultimately at the end of our conversation right now, and the conversation with the other employee that we're going to need to have in the future, we got to make sure that it's a win-win-win. That when we come out of this difficult situation, that when we get through it, we're good. We're back together as a team, and that we're cool in our working relationship with each other, and that we're going to move forward in a positive, better way than this current situation right now. So I love using the word coach because it makes it very simple. And I think some of you might have to do reviews. How many of you have done reviews or do reviews? Vast majority of you. And again, if you want to use your reactions, you can. When you do reviews, and I'm sure many of you have had difficult reviews, and they're not fun to do. Difficult reviews are not fun to do at all. But again, that's why I use the word coach. So many times if I have a difficult review, one that I know that this employee, and we've been working with them, and maybe there's some documentation in the file, and you kind of see some effort and things like that, but you're at that one annual review, the first thing I sit down is I say, you know what, again, I'm your coach, and we're sitting down for your annual review, and we're going to go through your appraisal, and I want to let you know that I am your coach here, but at the same point, I'm going to let you know on the front end, this is going to be a little bit difficult review for you to take. There's not going to be any surprises. Those are things that we've talked about over the course of the year, but now we're sitting down. And so it is going to be a little bit of a difficult review. And I find that when I do that on the front end and I frame that with that employee, that it is going to be a difficult review, it's much easier for me to give the review because I've already told that on the front end. And normally what happens is that a manager starts going through the review and then they start feeling bad. Well, maybe I shouldn't have scored them that low, or maybe I shouldn't have, But again, when you do a review and you do a review for an employee, your heart has to be that I care for you. I'm your coach. I want us to have the review, have the conversation, but when we're done, we're going to move forward in a positive way with a game plan on a few things that we're going to work on in the course of the next year, because I am also vested in your success. And I think for employees, that's mainly what they want to know, that you care about them and that you are vested in their success as well too. So we're going to talk about a couple of things as we continue to go on here. So why do we talk about positive culture as a must? And so one of the things that I thought about, again, as I was preparing for this and worked with Whitney, and we just had a great meeting. We got great scores on it. We had a few other folks that helped us with that as well too. But when you think of the word must, positive culture is a must. We have to create an environment where it stands for more understanding, support, trust, and teamwork. And if you start thinking about that, using positive culture is a must, where we're creating an environment where there's more understanding. Sometimes as managers, maybe we're having a little bit of a difficult day, or maybe that person's having a difficult day, or maybe they're struggling with what has been presented or what they need to accomplish. We need to come from a position of, we want to understand where they're coming from first. And I think you guys have heard it before, seek to understand and then be understood when we're communicating with people. That first we want to seek to understand where they're coming from, And again, maybe it's a one-off, maybe it's a trend that you're watching and seeing, but how can we come in and that we're trying to understand their position? And I've told employees a lot of times, you know what? I can tell something's going on in your life or something's going on here. How can I help? And it's not to pry or really get into it because I don't know the situation, but I also want to understand what's going on with them. And again, that I'm here to help, I'm here to coach them through that. Our team also needs to know that we support them, that we support them in their work, we support them what they're trying to accomplish, we're trying to support them in what they need to do every day. Trust is so important to a positive culture. You got to have trust within your team members. That what trust in the role that you have, the trust in the role that they have, and trust in that we can have this great open communication as you come across difficulties within what you're trying to do, that you can come to me and that we're going to solve it together and we're going to work together to get to the other side again as well too. And you have to have that trust, because if you don't have that trust, they're not going to come to you. And again, I'm going to go back to, we create the environment that we're in. And how many of you worked for managers in your career and in the past that, man, when you were coming in that day, you didn't know what kind of manager they were going to be that day? Are they going to be a great manager that day? Or are they going to be a manager that, man, it's like their dog made a mess and they had to clean it up and they're late to work or whatever might be going on, but they're just kind of this very volatile manager that's just kind of up and down. One day they're great, positive, super excited. The next day it's, man, don't talk to them because they're going to bite your head off. Again, as managers, we can't do that. We have to make sure that we're creating that good environment in the morning, that how are you doing? What do you need? Do you need anything from me? And then here's what I'm going to be doing for the day. If you need anything, make sure you come and visit with me and let's chat about it. Again, making sure that we have that great open communication within our team. And again, that's what continues to create trust and trust within our environment. And then the last thing is teamwork, that everyone knows their role, that they're accomplishing their role, that they're performing to the best of their abilities, but even more important, that you are creating the environment where they can produce and perform to the best of their ability as well too. So Whitney, I'm going to have you pull up now. How many of you have heard of the Gallup Q12? Again, show of hands or do the reactions, raise your hand, give me the thumbs up. It's called the Gallup Q12. I don't see any hands up. I don't see any words or anybody, the emojis or the reactions. So Whitney's actually going to provide this for you. And so with a couple of companies I was with, we actually used the Gallup Q12. And so the Gallup Q12, and you can Google it, you can take a look at it, but really what it is companies buy into it. And what they do is they do a survey of everybody within your organization, and you will get a score. And the first thing the Gallup is going to do is they're going to break your staff and your employees, not individually. It's confidential. You're not going to see who, you're not going to see what, but they're going to break your team into 3 categories. You're going to get a score. Number 1 is engaged. And I want you to think about an engaged employee. What does an engaged employee look like? So that's the number 1 category. And typically, if you Google Gallup Q12, after this webinar, take a look at it. But typically the run is they are between 30 and 35% of your employees are engaged. So basically a third. So basically a third of your employees are engaged, which means they're coming in, they're contributing, they're positive influence. You don't have to tell them what to do. They kind of automatically do it. They're just a good employee. They contribute more than a lot of times what you ask. The next category is disengaged. So a disengaged employee, they're not bad. They're just there. They get a paycheck. Sometimes they need some hand holding. Sometimes they're just not always in a good mood. So that's that category. And that roughly runs about 55%, roughly. So 55% are disengaged. The last category is actively disengaged. So I want you to think about, maybe you have one on your team now, maybe you've been on a team before. I want you to think about a actively disengaged employee. And who are they? Again, when I'm speaking to a group and an audience, I ask for feedback. What does that look like? What does an actively disengaged employee look like? Toxic, a cancer to the group, negative, always complaining, stirring the pot, and if you speak to your group, and again, in our stores, we always had the morning meeting before the store opened. I could pick out the actively disengaged employees. You can see it on their face. It's right there. They're actively disengaged. And again, that's about 15 to 20%, depending on your organization. So you got about a third of them engaged. They're the ones you don't have to worry about. They're your performers. You have this group of disengaged. They do a good job. They like their job, but they're there. And then you have your actively disengaged. Guess who you need to focus on? You're actively disengaged. And why do I say you need to focus on them? You either need to improve their performance or you need to get rid of them. And I joke that you need to promote them to customer. They need to be out of your organization. They're toxic. They're not doing you any favors. They're probably not giving good customer service. They're actively disengaged. They're not engaged at all, but they are actively disengaging and they're causing problems within your organization. So you need to sit down with them and say, you know, there's things we can't tolerate. You're not meeting our mission statement, our vision, our core values. You're doing this and that. And we need to change your performance. And I'm your coach. I'm here to help you change your performance, but it is up to you. And it is up to you. You have a choice. And your choice is to begin performing at the level we're going to talk about and become engaged. Otherwise, the choice is going to become mine and you're not going to like my choice. And I do have those conversations and I do tell people that because they need to know what's going to be the outcome if they choose to continue to be actively disengaged. And so again, I have run a number of stores across the country, probably 8 different Herberger stores, which is like Macy's. I've been in 3 different Cabela's stores. I went down to help with setup teams. I worked in 2 different Hobby Lobby stores, corporate office. And so as I've gone into different stores and I work with the team, work with the managers, I can tell with them and I ask them, how's your team? How's your department, you know, that you have your employees in your department? And, you know, is everyone engaged? Who's actively disengaged? Well, let's start working with that person. And after a while, the conversation actually eventually rolls up to my level. And the conversation is, we need to change this and turn it around. And there's times I have had to terminate employees. It's not fun. But after I have done that and terminated those actively disengaged employees, I've had managers come up to me and say, thank you. Thank you for getting rid of that employee. They have been toxic. They have been not good for our organization. I have managers come up and say, we've tried to get rid of that person for years. And they're the ones that will threaten you with the lawsuit. They're the ones that will say, I'm coming after you. I've had that thrown at me, I don't know how many times, and it has never happened because I've done things right. I've coached them along. I've got my proper paperwork and documentation. And at some point we get to the conversation where, you know what, this isn't a good fit for you. I'm not saying you're a bad person, just not a good fit. We need to get you into a different environment where you can excel, you can succeed, and you can move on. So those are the categories, roughly. So one of the things with the Gallup Q12 is a couple of things. Number one, your staff and your team knows what's expected of you at work and that they have the materials and equipment to do their work right. And again, Whitney is going to send this out to you. It's going to be available to you. But I almost know these because I've used them so much with Cabela's, and I can almost tell you what the number is. Number 7 is an important one. My opinions count. Again, if you want to create this environment, a positive culture, and it's a must, are your employees coming to you and they've got an idea or they've got something, a direction they want to go, and all of a sudden it's just shot down? And Whitney, you probably might have a few board members that shoot things down as you bring things forward. You're excited about it. And I kind of use the example of you're standing there with your big red balloon. Someone comes up and they put a needle in it. They pop your balloon, something that you're excited about. So as you a manager, are you making sure that your employees, that their opinions count, that maybe it might not be right, but you know what? That's a good idea. That's a good concept. Let me think about it. Let me consider it, what that means. Do they have a best friend at work? But I think some of the most important things is Q4 in the last 7 days, you somehow in some way have recognized or praised your employee for the work they've done. That's very important, that they get that recognition, they get that praise, that thank you. Thank yous go a long way. That you care about them. We already talked about that earlier, Q5. But the other one is Q11. In the last 6 months, someone at work has talked to me about my progress. You've actually had the opportunity to say, how are you doing here? How are things going? What can I help you with? Where do you want to go within our organization? How do you want to grow? How can I help you grow? Because you're talking to them about their progress. Now, Whitney, if you kind of go up to the next page real quick, I'm just going to talk about that. Not super important. So really, this is kind of broken down into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What's the basic? Basic is Q1 and Q2. I know it's expected of me, and my supervisor makes sure I have the material and equipment to do my job. Individual will be the next 4Q, Q3 through Q6. As an individual, I have the opportunity to do my best every day. I've received praise. Someone cares about me. Someone's encouraging my development. That's individual. Q7 through Q10 is teamwork. My opinions count. Mission is important, and I have the best friend at work. Growth is Q11 and Q12. So maybe I'll just open it up for questions while I take a drink of water real quick on the Q12.
I think I have a question, kind of, these all seem very intuitive, which I think is also part of the point, is it's not complicated. But I would say, if these 12 things are something you maybe haven't thought about before, where is a good place to start? I would assume it would be kind of with the basic pieces and then kind of expand from there. Is that right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so part of it is, what is the expectation? What's the outcome? What's the outcome we're trying to achieve either as an organization? That's why I say mission statement is so important. What is our purpose? But then in your role, what is your, what are the expectations within your role? What are we trying to accomplish? But then what are the expectations within a project as well? What's the expectations? What's the outcome? What's the timeline? What are we looking at? And then now, what do you need from me? How can I help you make sure that you can accomplish your goal and your purpose and your role here within the organization? So you're right on, Whitney, starting at the very basic level and then just kind of, okay, work to the next 4 that you're recognizing and praising your employees and that you're encouraging their work and their development as well too. That's one of the neat things about Chamber and meeting people like Whitney and other people within the Chamber world is we definitely have a professional development system. We have state associations, we have regional associations, and national associations that help us in our development with what we do. And we bring our staff to them because we want to help them develop as well too. So if there's training, professional development courses, maybe some of you joined this webinar because you wanted to help your own professional development. Thought, I want to create a great atmosphere and I want to make sure we have this positive culture. And the reason why I had you guys write down the score at the start is because, again, while you own that score, what I find typically, and I do a lot of seminars, I do them on building the culture of legendary customer service, seminars like this as well too. What I find typically is that people that are already doing a good job, they want to learn how to do it better. And so I'm sure that many of you are already doing a great job. And I'm just going to encourage you, just find a couple of points in this webinar on how you can do it better. I find that people or organizations or companies that probably should be in my customer service seminars, they don't show up. Managers don't show up, they don't send their staff, but the ones that are already doing a great job, they're there, they're sending their people there, and they're sending their staff there because they want, again, they're encouraging their professional development. So again, how do you begin creating this culture you want for your team? So Winnie, I might have you stop screen sharing real quick. So how many of you, again, just a question, how many of you do some sort of customer service survey? So do you do a survey with your clients, your customers? Again, if you do the reaction, I see one thumbs up, some maybe, kind of, and whatnot. I will tell you that there's a direct correlation between the positive culture you create and great customer service. And we see that because not only at Cabela's did we do the Q12, but we also did customer service scores. And how many of you have heard of the phrase Net Promoter Score? Has anybody heard of that? Whitney has. I know the chamber industry does it a little bit. I would encourage you, all of you, to read a book, and it's called The Ultimate Question. The Ultimate Question. And the reason why I'd encourage you to read that book is because there's only one question, and they've done surveys, they've done studies. I can't remember the author right now, but again, it's called The Ultimate Question. It's a red cover book. But they've actually done a number of surveys with a number of companies. I think Dell will be in there, Southwest Airlines, number of companies, FedEx, Amazon, things like that. There's one question and only one question you need to ask your customers. And I've done this within my own chamber. When I first started in took over the chamber 6 years ago in Great Falls, I actually put out this survey to all of our chamber members. And here's the ultimate question. Here's what you need to ask. Based on your transaction, experience, or interaction, you pick the word. Based on your experience today at Cabela's, what's the likelihood you would recommend us to your friends and family? Again, based on your experience today, what is the likelihood you would recommend us to your friends and family? And they would have them score it 1 to 10. They found that your promoters, your net promoters, would give you scores of 9 and 10. They're okay, they're neutral, 7s and 8s. And your detractors, 6 and below. And so the goal is to make sure that your team and your staff is, again, thank you. Thanks, Whitney. She just put it in the chat box. When you're giving great and creating this great positive culture within your staff and with your team, they're going to give great customer service and your scores will continue to go up. And definitely at Cabela's, we scored everything. I mean, everything. We counted how many cars pulled into our parking lots. We counted how many people walked into our doors. We got a report every day. How many transactions did you have? How many cars pulled in? How many people walked in your doors? How many transactions? What was your average transaction? How many credit cards did you sell that day, if you would? So, I mean, everything was scored, and every day we saw our scores. And the other scores that we had were customer service scores on the survey. We had our shrinkage at the end of the year. We had all these scores that we took a look at. So guess what? The one thing I would focus on was within my store, not only creating a positive culture, but customer service. If I create a positive culture that my employees are giving great customer service, that takes care of the sales. We have more transactions. We have a higher average ticket per transaction. And ultimately, at the end of the year, when I did inventory, it helped my shrink number. So again, that's a great book. And it's the ultimate question. Based on your experience today, what's the likelihood that you would recommend Cabela's, your organization, to their friends and family? So when I started with the chamber in Great Falls, that was my question, one question. Based on your experience with the chamber, what's the likelihood you'd recommend us to your business colleagues and associates? That was a question. The next one was, why did you give the chamber that score? Again, I was brand new. I took over from another chamber president. What's the reason for your score? What's the chamber doing well? And what can we do better? 4 questions, that's simple. Didn't have to be a long, lengthy survey, but I figured out very quickly what the score was, what we were doing well, that those people thought that responded, and what I could do better. And it gave me kind of a 2-year game plan of things I needed to do to change the culture within the chamber to make sure that we were meeting the needs of, again, our chamber members. So again, a great book. Another book I'm going to recommend, and it's called Traction by Gino Wickman. How many of you have read that or heard of that book? Phenomenal book. I would highly recommend that book as well too, especially if you are a CEO, a manager of a smaller company. That is an awesome book. It's probably the best business book I have read. It's highlighted, it's underlined. I wrote down where it was a cross-reference on the pages. I mean, I took notes. Phenomenal book, and I'd highly recommend it. Here's why. There's 2 reasons why I'd recommend that book. Number one, they talk about people, and they talk about how important people are to your organization. So it's a little bit about culture. He asks you to kind of score your staff in 2 different areas. So the one area is score your staff, yes or no, on do they meet and do they live up to the core values of your company? So at Cabela's, I use the word SQUIRE, superior customer service, quality products and services, integrity and honesty, respect for individuals and others, excellence and performance. Those 5 things from Cabela's. And I left them in 2008. I still know them. That's how important to me core values, mission, and purpose is. So does your staff and team live up to those core values? Are they doing them? Yes or no? And it could be, yeah, they do, but sometimes they don't. You can score them a yes/no. But then how many yeses do they have and how many no's do they have? How many yeses, how many no's? So that's one category that Gino Wickman in the book Traction tells you to score your staff on. And then there's 3 other things. And so the 3 other things are, they get it, meaning they get what we do, they want it, they want to achieve, they are engaged, they want it, they want to perform more, they want to perform to a higher level. They show that they want it and want the success of the organization. And then number 3 is they have the capacity to do it. So they get it, they want it, and they have the capacity to do it. If they get a no in any of those categories, they shouldn't be on your team. So Gino will tell you in the book that they can be a yes or no, but there should definitely be more yeses than nos. If there's more nos than yeses, that's definitely a sit-down conversation. And if there's no more nos than yeses, then they're probably going to get a no in those last 3 categories. They get it, they want it, and they have the capacity to do it. They're not living up to your core values. So if any of those are a no, time for a sit-down conversation, they're probably off your team. So again, another great book on that. So again, we're going to go to some questions here in a little bit. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate that. So the one thing I'm going to share with you as well too, is that creating a positive culture is not a one-time thing. Okay, Shane, I read your books. We're going to do this. We're there. We've done the Gallup Q12. I went and I asked everybody, hey, do you know what's expected of you? Do you have your right equipment right now? Okay, great job. I praised you. All right, we're going to sit down in 3 months and I'm going to do, a sit down mid-year evaluation. Okay, Shane, I did that. I created the positive culture. Positive culture is an everyday thing that you constantly have to work on. So I'm going to encourage you. Again, you're here. That already tells me you're doing a great job within your cultures. So just continue. What's 1 or 2 things that I can do to continue to create that positive culture? So I'm going to leave one other thing with you, and then I'm actually going to have Whitney pull up another worksheet as well too. So while she gets ready to do that, as a boss, as a manager, as a CEO, and I hate those terms. I hate CEO, I hate boss, I hate manager. You all are leaders. You all are leaders. You're leading your team, you're leading your organization, you're leading and trying to help them accomplish the mission, the purpose, the vision, and live up to the core values of it. But again, creating that open environment, I want you to challenge yourself. Are you as a manager, do you find that you react to situations that are either negative or tough? Someone comes to you with something, are you either reacting to them or are you responding to them? Are you reacting or are you responding? Typically reacting means that's an emotionally driven person or manager. You come in, you share the news, it's not good news, it's bad news. Do they blow up? Do they throw a fit? Or do they respond and respond appropriately? So a response is more of a measured, okay, I'm taking the news, I'm absorbing it, I'm listening to it, and then I'm thinking about how is my response going to be versus an immediate reaction. And I've had a couple of employees that had a reaction instead of a response. And I've actually joked with them and say, we really need to work on how you hear news and how you react to it. And we're going to work on your poker face. And so it becomes a joke within the group, but I'm like poker face, and I can go like this to somebody that doesn't react well, and all of a sudden they know exactly what I'm saying. They understand that, wow, that was not a good reaction I just had to the group or the person. I need to, again, continue to work on my poker face. So Winnie, again, thank you. So here's a template that you guys can use, and I would encourage you to use it on Mondays, and that's exactly what they call it, the 9 minutes on Monday template. And this is how, again, you can start to begin to create this positive culture within your team or within your organization. And it's just a minute for each category. So there's 9 of them. So Whitney, I might have you scroll up real quick, but with who will you show that you care this week? Who are you going to recognize? How are you going to recognize them? Celebrate birthdays, celebrate anniversaries. I start my Monday meetings, and I meet every Monday with my staff. And the first thing on the top of the agenda, other than my mission statement, the first thing is we're going to celebrate wins. So tell me what was something you won at last week. We want to celebrate that together. What was your win last week? We did that for a few weeks, and then I changed it. I said, what we're going to do this week is I want you to tell me how you saw one of our team members win. What did they accomplish last week that you saw? Man, that was a win. I want you to share that for them. So again, it's just not the routine. It's changing it up on occasion and doing different things like that. So that's an easy way to do it. So again, who are you going to reward? Who are you going to recognize? How are you going to do it? Who are you going to help grow this week? Maybe it's that conversation. You say, hey, I noticed you've been struggling lately. What can I do to help you? How can I help you grow? How can I help you meet the deadline, the timeline, accomplish what we're trying to accomplish together? So what are you going to do? Again, That could be the same person. Maybe you got a small team. It's the same one that you're giving feedback to. But here's what I noticed. You're coming in, you're starting to come in late. Are the things I can help you with there, or you just don't seem to be as engaged as you were when you first got the project. It seems like you were super excited. Now it's starting to go like this. What's going on? How can I help you? And again, these are just 9 questions that you can go through as well. Look at 7. What's one small thing you can do to help your teamwork, your stickiness? We're working together. We're helping each other. I accomplished my project. Who can I help now? And then again, what leadership quality are you going to model? And that's probably the most important question. I don't do everything perfect. I'll be the first to admit that. But one of the things that I constantly try and do is, how can I be a better leader for my team? What books do I need to read? What do I need to do? How did I maybe misstep last week with an employee? And upon reflection at the end of the day or the end of the week, say, I kind of messed that up. I need to go and kind of humble myself and be a little bit vulnerable and say, you know what, I made a mistake and I apologize. I just ask for your forgiveness. Man, you're going to see that employee, man, that's a leader. They care and they want what's best for me, and they're willing to admit their mistakes. And so again, what leadership quality you're going to model this week? So Whitney, thank you. Appreciate you throwing those up. So again, Whitney's going to have those for you, so you can use a couple of those tools. Use them in combination. Don't feel like you need to do it all today or this week, but what can I do and how can I kind of maybe dovetail those two together? And I would start with the Monday 9-minute thing right off the bat, and then have the Gallup Q12 right beside that, and just say, what can I do? And I find that when I pin stuff up, all of a sudden I start doing it subconsciously. Oh, I see that. Oh man, I need to go visit with Scott or Tim or whoever might be on my team. So here's one thing that I'm going to do, and I'm going to ask you 2 more questions, and we're going to wrap it up and open it up to questions. So I would like you, and I know I've given you a lot of information, go around and ask your team. Ask some of your most close people. If you've got senior managers, ask them this question. If you were to change one thing to improve our company, improve our culture, what would it be that we have the ability to change? Because I could ask that to my employees in retail, and they're like, can you change the schedule, Shane? Can you just make it 10 to 5 every day and no nights and no weekends? I can't do that. So again, if you were to change one thing within our company, within our organization, within our team, what would that one thing be? Ask your staff that, if you can change one thing. And I'm going to finish it with this. I want each of you on this call to write down one thing that you're going to do. So I've shared a lot of information, given you some handouts, giving you some books to read. What is one thing that you know that you need to do to improve the culture of your organization? Say, Shane, I'm going to commit to this. This is one thing that I know that I need to do within my team that's going to improve the culture. And the first thing that popped in your head is probably the thing you need to write down. Maybe it's, Shane, I need to have that conversation with that employee that I've been putting off. And I need to have it because I know that that person's behavior or performance has been a detriment to my team. It's been a drag on my team. Maybe they have not been coming in with the best attitude. And maybe that's the one thing that you need to do that would help create that positive culture. Now, it's not going to be easy. Anytime you have to have those difficult conversations, you need to think about it, because your goal in those ultimate conversations is reconciliation and some restoration. And how can I end up with a great positive outcome? Sometimes they're not. Sometimes, since I'm going to leave, it is what it is. And sometimes that's best for the organization as well, too. So with that, I'm just going to open it up, wrap it up. If anybody wants to share anything, you can do that as well.
Awesome. Shane, thank you so much. It was a lot of really great information. I think the one thing that I'm going to do is start asking those positive questions in our weekly staff meetings. I don't do that, and I think that's a really nice way to kind of start off the meeting or end the meeting. So I liked that a lot. Does anybody have questions for Shane before we wrap it up? You can just unmute yourself or raise your hand. Either way is fine. Yeah, Jason.
Shane, I'm not sure if you, I know you did a screen share earlier and I didn't take a photo or anything, but are you going to send a copy of that over email to everybody involved? That would be lovely.
Yeah, we'll go, everybody who registered for the webinar. So we'll get a copy of these 2 PDF documents and recording of this webinar. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks. Good question, Jason.
And I would just I would just like to plug for the book Traction. If you haven't read it, and the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, what they talked about, that was a game changer for our internal organization within the chamber. Talks a lot about making sure that you're organized with the right people in the right seats and playing to their strengths, but also how to organize your workflow so that you're better prepared, to take on last minute things. So, all right.
Well, I would challenge each of you to help each other out. Great group. Brittany and I talked a couple of times, and she was telling me who's coming and different businesses that you guys have. Work together as a team. Hold each other accountable. Go to Susan next week. Susan, what did you write down? Were you able to accomplish it? How can I encourage you? So you guys are a great group, great team. Whitney told me about you. Help each other and hold each other accountable. Say, how are you creating that positive culture? So, yeah, so thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Whitney, thank you as well. She spoke very highly of all of you. So thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm so glad you could make it. And Shane, thank you again for leading this webinar on positive culture within your organization. So glad you could all be here with us today. And I think that wraps it up. And thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you around town soon.
You bet. Thanks, everybody.